everybody's gone to the Rapture, a game that was made by the Chinese Room, a development studio that produced a game I played many years ago called Dear Esther. The genre that these types of games fall under is called a walking simulator. Most often, these are games that essentially try to tell a story, almost like an interactive movie, where all you can really do is move around while things around you take place. It's almost like an experience rather than a game. I mentioned Dear Esther because it was the first game I'd ever played by the Chinese Room. It was also one of their first games they made, which was a very linear, very straightforward, pretty short game that told a story, and that was pretty much it. But I really enjoyed it. I liked it. It was kind of my first experience of a walking simulator. And so all these years later, to finally play the big follow-up, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which is more of a spiritual successor than anything. It takes the ideas presented in Dear Esther and tells a different story, but this time on a much bigger scale. And what I mean by that is the world is much more open. You can kind of go wherever you want. There's no linear path. There's a story being told to you, but there are a lot of side paths, and you can go anywhere you want. And this creates problems that I did not foresee. And when I had the vision for a follow-up to Dear Esther, which I always thought, make the game bigger, make it more open, and that would be the solution to making a sequel. But in this way, the game causes more problems, I think, than I originally imagined. So the biggest issue I have with this game is, let me set it for you like this. The game tells its story over 6 different parts. Each of these 6 stories is being told simultaneously, so you're following a certain character in the events of what happens. I'm not going to spoil anything in the game. The only minor spoilers will be gameplay elements, but that's basically it. As you're going through each of these characters' stories, you're following this light that is kind of like, a mechanic in the game that shows you where to go next. There is a turn of events in the game, and here's the minor spoilers, and that's that you find out some of the characters also see this light. So it's kind of a nice, somewhat of a twist, I guess, that you're not just seeing this game mechanic, it's actually part of the story, which I think is great. Unfortunately, that's kind of where the greatness of the storytelling fell off for me. I felt like by the end of the second character story, I was the most invested. And unfortunately, the third character, this is where I discovered my biggest problem with the game, which is that you can miss parts of the story. I later found out after beating the game that there are different trophies and achievements for only doing certain parts of the game or doing this or doing that. But when I look at the game as a whole and I think, okay, well, what is the story trying to tell me? And I find out that you can fucking miss parts of the story. And this is my biggest issue. The game has a problem where the light that you follow to find out where to go next, you can get lost from it very easily. And this happened to me multiple times in the game. I kept getting lost. And when that happens, you're basically screwed because you don't know where to go. And I had a situation where I was in the middle of a story, I couldn't figure out where to go, and then I ultimately stumbled into another story, and I missed the ending of that story. Like, I actually ended up finding the ending later, but that's not how it should work. Like, you should be able to play it all, and I guess my way around fixing this type of thing would be make the light always come back to you, or how about make it so you don't have to walk through mud everywhere you go. Your character basically cannot move quickly, which in a normal linear game like Dear Esther, it doesn't really matter. But in a game like this where you can go anywhere, if you get lost, you are just fucked because you are going to spend forever trying to get around. Most often traveling through areas you've already been through, just wasting your time. The gameplay flaws aside, I enjoyed the game for what it was. It was a nice stroll through a walking simulator, if you will. I don't really know what else to call it. An interactive movie. I might say to watch this one on YouTube if you're really interested. I feel like Dear Esther was a lot more of an experience when I played it. This one, it does ask more of you. There are definitely more places to go and more conversations to hear, but I don't know. I wasn't super invested. I didn't think the story was mind-blowing. I was too frustrated with a lot of the elements of the game to really give a shit. So it is what it is. And I'm going to the Rapture, baby. Woo! Rapture.